intersection of law and everyday life. We strive to cover it all, help you get your business right. At the corner of legal insight and understanding, we hope to keep your knowledge ever expanding. Welcome to Law Street with GHR. We got law education accessible to all. Oh, welcome to Law Street with GHR. We're informing the community, so come and get involved.
Welcome to Law Street, at the corner of legal insight and understanding. I'm Gabrielle Grant Gilpin Hudson, partner in the law firm Grant Henry and Rooms, and I'm joined today by our partner Lisa Rooms.
Hello.
Awesome. Okay, so Lisa, what are we talking about today?
Today we're going to be talking about some questions that you should be asking yourself before you incorporate a company in Jamaica.
Okay, fair enough. So you want to incorporate a company in Jamaica, and these are the questions for consideration.
Yes.
All right, so kick us off. Where do I start?
Okay, so one of the most important questions you should ask yourself, and this is a question that a lot of people take for granted, but it's actually really very important. Mm-hmm. Is the name that I want for my company available?
Yeah.
No, I have gone through some situations where a person is so set on a name,
yes,
and it's just not available. So what the company's office does is before you incorporate a company, they'll check to make sure the name is available. Mm-hmm. And why they do this is obviously because you can't have two companies on the register with the same name.
Gotcha.
So if your name that you want is not available, the next step is to try to choose a name that is available, or try to find some way to work around the name that you want. Mm-hmm. And then what you will do is you'll do a reservation of that name prior to incorporating your company.
Okay, so like the name is on hold, and I can make sure that name is available while I get my paperwork together.
So you do your search to make sure the name is available, and then you reserve it while you're getting your paperwork together.
I see. Okay, that makes sense. And then if I have a name, what then is the next step?
Okay, another thing that a lot of people do ask is, do I need to have a address in Jamaica?
Yeah, name
and
address.
The answer to that question is yes, you need to have an address in Jamaica, and it cannot be a post office box. It actually has to be
an
actual
address.
No, one of the questions that we get asked, particularly by people abroad who are incorporating companies, is, I don't actually have an address. What do I do? Mm-hmm. The answer to that question is, there are people who do provide registered address services.
Okay.
Now, with the FSC coming in to sort of regulate trust and corporate services, a person providing a registered address
is a person that has to have a...
Yes, if they're doing it as a service, they must be licensed by the FSC to do so. So you have to be very careful when people are saying, yes, you can use my address, and you're going to be paying for that. You need to make sure that this person is licensed by the FSC to do so. But you must have an address.
That makes sense, because the address is things for like service.
Yes.
Your documents have to go there. They need to know where to find you. So
Absolutely.
It makes sense that,
Absolutely.
you have to have one, and that the person that is providing one for you should actually know what comes with that responsibility.
Absolutely,
right?
Absolutely.
Okay, so I'm gonna ask a question now.
Yes.
Say I'm foreign, or say that some persons that I want to be involved in my company are foreign. Do officers of a company incorporated in Jamaica need to be Jamaican citizens?
So the answer to that question is actually no.
Okay.
So under companies legislation, persons who are officers of companies being the directors or the secretary, don't actually have to be Jamaican citizens, nor do they have to be resident in Jamaica.
Okay.
The one condition to this is someone who is an officer, however, does need to have a TRN.
Okay, a taxpayer registration number. And that's not hard to get.
No, and it's not hard to get at all. And sort of the reason for that is that they have to be able to track down somebody
for the purpose of taxes.
Yeah. In the event of something, they have to have somebody on the record.
Makes sense.
So at least one person needs to have a TRN, but no one actually has to be a citizen or a resident.
Okay, and suppose it's just me then. Suppose it's just me and I am the director of my company. How does that work?
Okay, so another consideration is it's fine to have one director of a company.
Okay.
However, you cannot also be the secretary.
So I can't be the only director and the secretary.
You cannot be the only director and the secretary. So that's one of the rules around companies. And so if you want to be the only director, you'll have to find someone to do the company secretary portion of the responsibilities in the company. And sort of the reason for that is because the company secretary does have responsibilities, and we wouldn't want to kind of harbor somebody with all of those responsibilities. Right. No.
Like even signing to
two people usually have to sign on, for example, documents that need to be under the seal of the company. Usually you require two people.
Got you.
So if you cannot find a company secretary or being an individual who, who's willing to take on the role of being a company secretary, again, there are entities in Jamaica that do offer those services.
And they have to be licensed.
And again, with the Trust and Corporate Services Providers legislation, this person does have to be registered with the FSC, or this entity does have to be registered with the FSC. So you should be very careful to check that they are in fact registered with the FSC to be able to provide company secretary services to you.
Got you. And I am assuming that is because of what comes with the role of actually being a company secretary. So what is that role?
So a company secretary really is the person who is assisting the directors with guiding the management of the company. So this person is not usually just a note-taking person.
Right.
This person is usually somebody who's responsible for preparing any notices that need to go to shareholders, for example, for any meetings. This person records the directors' meetings. This person is responsible for updating your registers that are required by the Companies Act. And in one of our earlier episodes, we would have gone through the different kinds of registers that are required. So it's not just a note-taking operation. This person is really there to be a support to the directors in ensuring that the company is being managed properly. And compliant with the Companies Office. And usually the company secretary may also assist, depending on the type of company, with any kind of compliance. For example, if you're a listed company, you need to be compliant with the Jamaica Stock Exchange. That's also something that may fall on the company office.
Secretary.
Yeah, on the company secretary.
Okay, and so we spoke about officers, we spoke about address, we spoke about name. Now, what about ownership? What about shares? How does that part go?
Okay, so a company has to have shares. It's a company limited by shares. Limited liability company in Jamaica. There are different types, but for the purpose of this, we're going to be talking about company limited by shares. Now, the question that we often get is, how many shares do I have to issue? What kind of shares do I have to issue? Is there a limit on the number of shares that, I have to issue? And really, the answers to these questions do depend on what you want for your company. So the shortest answer is yes, you have to issue shares. How many shares you issue will depend on what is the purpose for this incorporation, and the types of different shares that you want to issue. They're ordinary shares, preference shares, they're ordinary shares with different categories. So it really will depend on how you want to structure your company. And that is why it's really important to have an attorney at law to assist you, a company's attorney to assist you in trying to determine how many shares do I need to issue, what kind of shares do I need to issue. For example, is this a company where I'm going to be bringing on investors?
Yeah.
In which case, you might want to be a company where you keep the ordinary shares for the original shareholders,
Right.
and then issue preference shares to your investors. So things like that, company's attorney will help you determine what is best to do. But yes, companies limited by shares will need to issue shares, and there are different types, and there's no maximum on the amount of shares that you can authorize your company to issue. So you can authorize your company to issue no maximum or unlimited, whatever you want to call it, you can do that. So there's that.
And I guess maybe you might want to just kind of also speak to an accountant as well, right, about that.
Right. And again, we do recommend that when you get to the point of wanting to start a company, that you do engage these professionals.
Yeah.
Because again, an accountant will help you determine how many shares you want to issue, and the structure and the value of those shares. Because when you do issue shares, you are to pay for them.
Yeah.
So your shareholders are to pay for the shares that they're issued. So depending on what you want the share capital of the company to look like, that is something you would also discuss with an accountant. Yes.
Okay. And then different shares have different rights. Is that something that I need to think about in terms of the restrictions on different types of shares and how you deal with them? Right.
So yes, absolutely. And in terms of restrictions on shares, for example, transferring shares, a private company must have a restriction on the transfer of shares.
Yeah.
So that is something that you really have to give consideration to, as to what are those restrictions that I want to place on the transfer of the shares? Is it that I want to make sure that if anybody in my company is transferring shares, they first have to offer it to the other shareholders? Those are things that you have to think about. And so, again, an attorney with knowledge in, companies law will be able to help you determine how wide you want to make those restrictions, or how constrained you want those restrictions to be.
Okay, so the restriction basically means that it's not that you can't transfer the shares, but it must have rules about
Yes, it will be subject to rules.
Got you. All right, and then the question that's maybe like the least popular question here. What's the situation with registering your company for taxes? How that go?
All right, so with the registration documents created by the company's office, it's a BRF form, which is a business registration form.
To form the company.
To form the company. Very luckily, this form, they realize that we can't just be going to all these different places and applying. So this form, being the business registration form, does actually apply your company for a number of taxes. So it applies your company it gives your company, first of all, a TRN, and then it applies your company for NIS, HART, and NHT. So once you incorporate your company with Companies Office, you get registered for these taxes, and then you'll just go along and make your payments because you're already registered when the time comes for that. When you do the registration with the BRF as well, there's an option for you also to apply for a TCC at the same time, which is a tax compliance certificate. Right. And what that tax compliance certificate does is basically say that you're compliant for tax, which gives you the ability to do a lot of things. If you wanted to import goods, and more particularly opening a bank account, because you will need a TCC to open a bank account. So it's always best to just check that little box that says that you're applying for TCC. If there's no specific purpose for the application for the TCC, it does allow you to apply for for a TCC for multiple purpose. So you could take that one. And so you'll get the TCC once your company is incorporated. And that will help you to, as we discussed, open a bank account. If you need to import anything, you'll have that initial TCC. The TCC does expire.
Yeah. So you have to
so you'll have to continue to follow up with that. And this is something, again, your accountant can help you with to continue to make sure that the TCC is up to date when you should need it.
Yeah.
But definitely the business registration form has become an excellent tool in helping apply for taxes.
Gotcha. And talk to me about the big boy now, Jamaica's value added tax, GCT, general consumption tax. How'd that go?
All right. So the BRF does not register you for GCT.
Okay.
And the reason for this is that GCT has a threshold in Jamaica. So there's a point in time where if you haven't hit a certain turnover in your business, you do not have to pay GCT. And this is very important because you should not be collecting GCT if you're not registered to pay GCT.
It's an offense, people.
Yeah, so do not collect GCT. Do not put any GCT on your invoices and collect GCT from people if you are not registered to collect GCT, because that means that you're not registered to pay it back over to the government. And GCT is a tax where you collect it on behalf of the government and then you give it back. It does not belong to you in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, and it has a lot of penalties associated
absolutely.
with it for late payment and all sorts of stuff. It's very serious, and you need an accountant again to help to guide you through these complexities.
Yes, so only when you have hit that threshold do you need to register for GCT, which is why the BRF does not provide for that.
Got you. Okay, so we spoke about name, we spoke about address, we spoke about officer's secretary, we also spoke a little bit about taxes, and you share. So wrap it all up for us. What would you want to leave us with in closing on things to consider before incorporating a company in Jamaica?
So what I would say is incorporating a company in Jamaica is not something to be taken lightly.
No.
It is a very serious thing because there are implications from incorporating a company. And in our earlier video, we would have discussed all the post-incorporation things. So be mindful before you incorporate a company, all of the things that you need to think about. And you know what? I feel like we're beating a dead horse when we say make sure to get the proper advice, the proper legal advice, in this case, the proper financial and accounting advice. Make sure to get all of that settled before you even put a pen to a paper to start applying.
Get the right advice.
Absolutely.
And it's something that when you do it, it requires maintenance. It's
Absolutely.
not something you can just do and just leave it there. The fines can get on you.
Yeah.
Do it properly.
Do it properly. I think that's it. So do it, spend a good amount of time and thought about, what we've discussed, the name, what you really want to do, and see if that's really the best way for you. So that's what I would leave everyone with. Pay attention before you incorporate. Ask yourself some serious questions. Ask yourself these questions that we have discussed.
Yeah, don't just go and just incorporate willy-nilly, guys. That's not cool.
No.
All right, well, thank you so much, Lisa. This was definitely very insightful. I feel like I have more legal understanding. And I hope that you will join us again soon for another episode of Law Street. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye. If you liked this video, visit our website at jhrlegal.com, where you'll find this and full-length articles on a variety of legal matters. If you like this video, hit subscribe, and click that notification bell for more content. The information in this video is for general discussion purposes only and does not constitute legal advice. If you would like legal advice, we would recommend that you book a consultation with one of our attorneys.